Hi, everyone. I'm LaToya McBean Pompy, and I have a special guest today with me on this podcast, fellow immigration attorney John Ting out of the Houston, Texas area. John, thanks so much for being with me today. How are you doing down there?
We're doing pretty good. Thank you so much, LaToya McBean Pompy, for having me on your channel. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. And just for those of you who won't know this, John works with us from time to time on various cases that we have in the Texas area through litigation, the mandamus process. He's a good partner for those types of cases. And he has his own channel with a lot of very good, solid information. And you guys need to check out his channel if you have not yet checked it out and subscribe as well. So we're going to dive right in, John, because there's so much going on. Oh my God, right? With immigration, we're in the
Goodness.
middle of so many changes, one of which is we're expecting a travel ban to be announced any day now. But even as we await the travel ban information from the White House, certainly there is a lot of concern that people with a lawful status, like green card holders, have. Have you been getting calls? Have you been seeing a lot of folks in your circle who are concerned about whether they could travel as green card holders?
Yes, we receive questions from, people calling almost every hour about this question or my own live show, just like I'm sure you have been receiving it. And we certainly, I'm sure both of us would want to provide the accurate information. And in my opinion, it's difficult. We, of course, give some information, some guidance, but
Mhm.
I think it's difficult right now without the official language from the White House.
Right, the official language with regard to certainly the travel ban. But as far as green card holders are concerned, generally speaking, green card holders, from what I experience here at McBean
Yes.
Law with respect to the phone calls and even some clients or former clients, everyone seems to be very concerned about whether they could leave the United States and safely re enter.
Yes. I mean, for me right now, I've been telling people, maybe you've said something similar, but I've been advising people who are a resident holder, they're a country on that proposed list to maybe wait on their travel until we see the more official language.
Right. I have videos out there about the draft travel ban countries, the red category, the yellow, the orange. And generally speaking, I've been advising folks online as well not to travel, just wait and see how all of this will play out. And we don't know yet how green card holders could be potentially caught up in any of the travel ban drama that is likely to come. Just the everyday person with a green card here in the United States really shouldn't have anything to worry about, right? No criminal record, no long stays outside of the United States. These individuals are also afraid to just leave and re-enter because I think they're hearing a lot of stories, well, stories
Right.
out there, right, about people having
Right.
problems at the
Yeah,
airport.
even you're right, Latoya. Even people who are not a national on that list, the proposed list. What do you think about that, Latoya? There's people, we both may have heard about, or some people share the TikTok video of the auntie. So yeah, I think after that video, people are a lot more concerned. What do you think? What have you been sharing?
I think certainly that a lot of these stories that we're hearing about, they're isolated, whether a person is detained or they are turned back, right? Like visa holders who are turned back through the process of expedited removal. There's a reason for a lot of what we're seeing, so to speak. And for us as immigration lawyers, this is what we hear about regularly in our practice, right? It's not really that new to us. It's new to a whole lot of people because there's a lot of attention now on travel and being able to come back into the United States. I'm sure we've all worked with individuals who were detained at the airport, folks who were then transferred to an ICE detention center for maybe months, and then they were released, and then we worked with them on their case, or a visa holder who was turned back because the government suspected that he or she is coming here to work or had violated some law or terms of the visa. So I think that a lot of these cases are really fact driven, they're isolated. There is, however, something going on that I'm concerned about deeply, and it has to do with obviously freedom of speech and the rights of green card holders, as well as visitors, those who are here on a student visa, who are being detained now, right? Visas are being revoked or they're being detained. What do you think about that? I think the freedom of speech connection with immigration is what is new.
That's completely new. I don't recall hearing about that during Trump's first term, but they're definitely taking up a few notches. I have seen the stories about that as well. I think a Columbia student as well. It's very concerning, not just F1 student, but a resident holder. I think
Mhm.
Mahmoud might be his first name, something like that. I don't want to say
Mahmoud
Mahmoud.
Khalil. Uh-huh.
Exactly. So it's very concerning. I'm glad there's more media attention on that. If I may share a tip, I know there's a lot of tips we can share when someone re-enters the country, but in general, it's very concerning in my opinion because it's quite almost like a hypocritical thing, right? Because both parties care about freedom of speech, but it depends on their perspective. And but yeah, one tip that I've been sharing with people is turn off Face ID on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
I think Samsung, I have iPhone,
Mm-hmm.
that Face ID makes convenient for everything when we log in, but in case you are at the customs desk and they want you to open your phone and you don't want to, now that would be a different advice, right? But I would just turn off that Face ID so they don't just grab your phone and point it to your face.
Oh, yeah, it's certainly easier to get into the phone if you have the Face ID feature turned on. Other tips that I know that I'm sharing, certainly, or we're sharing here at McBean Law, has to do with length of stay, right? If you're a green card holder, do not stay out longer than 6 months. We're also advising people not to travel if they have a criminal record because it could be a flag, even if your case was maybe dismissed years ago, but still
Mhm.
there's something there, particularly if it's drug related or something very serious. That is going to be a concern for customs. What other tips are you giving people about travel these days?
Absolutely, Latoya. And I would even add in there, I'm sure you've had received these questions about crimes related to the Lincoln Riley Act,
Mm-hmm.
because that gives DHS to detain someone, even if it's someone that's had an arrest. That's the simple one word arrest, not just convicted. Even if someone has been had some kind of plea deal and it's there no problem, complete probation, I would still be concerned. Definitely consult with the immigration attorney.
Absolutely. Let's shift gears just a little bit and talk about USCIS. Because as you know, you were a practicing attorney during Trump 1.0, and I'm sure you could recall a massive amount of policy changes that USCIS was faced with during those 4 years. And we're now seeing all of those come back and then more some, right? Is it too early, I should say, to see any real trends coming out of USCIS as far as case processing or how they're approaching your cases?
Well, I can tell you, Latoya, that we've probably had almost as many interviews scheduled this year thus far compared to last year. So I
Interviews are back
interviews are back. So at
for
least with
for
that,
everyone.
for
Yeah,
every kind of case,
yeah.
unfortunately. I remember even parent a US citizen, 21-year-old child and above having interviews for their parent, even for those
Mm,
cases before.
wow.
So they're definitely back. We have had some concerns. I don't know if you've heard or seen about ICE vehicles at the field office, but some of my cases are because I used to have an office in Dallas majority of the time. Now it's Houston. We've heard of ICE vehicles at the Dallas field office. So I was a
Mm,
little concerned,
mm-hmm,
advised my clients that they had order of removal.
mm-hmm,
I gave them all the advisals, such as like we need to be ready to apply for a state of removal application with ICE, things of that nature.
right.
And turned out they happened to actually have more questions to the U.S. citizen sponsor because they're concerned about how she obtained her residency and then became a naturalized citizen. So, some food for thought on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what that tells me is that the vetting, they're serious about vetting everyone, even a petitioner, to drill down to see whether a petitioner might even be qualified to file for a spouse or parent. And that's obviously very concerning, which is why it's so important to properly prepare your case and make sure that you have a good case. And I think certainly by working with a qualified immigration attorney, the attorney will do diligence to look at both the petitioner and the beneficiary to see, okay, what are some of the potential issues that we'll encounter as we go into USCIS field office. One of the big concerning issues are things that I've heard recently concerning USCIS, and it comes out of Florida. The fact that at green card interviews, ICE has shown up and arrested, I want to say about 9 or 10 individuals at their interview. Have you heard about that?
I have heard about that, but I don't know all the facts about that quite yet.
Right,
Can you share
right.
with us?
Yeah, so I certainly don't know the individual cases and whether these individuals also had a removal order or a criminal record, because as we know with immigration, there's usually a lot more to a story than is
Mhm.
being told, right? So I do suspect that maybe some of these individuals had something serious going on, but again, that's merely speculation on my part based on experience. It raised alarm, some degree of alarm, because these are people who are trying to become legal, trying to fix their status, and they're doing what is right, right? They're going in for an interview with the government to discuss their qualifications. And then here they are facing arrest, right? That's really
Right.
scary.
The question is like, "Oh, isn't this just one pathway to become U.S. citizen?" I've had employer sponsors ask me that question. Like, we have a lot more education to share, right? This is
Yeah,
why we both have our own respective channels,
right.
and people are concerned, and they are trying to do it the right way. Latoya, have you had this question? Because I've received it a few times. Is this the safe time to still file for a benefit?
Oh, yeah. And I do have a video out about this question as well, because people are afraid when they hear stories about folks going in for an interview and then they're detained by ICE. Obviously, that could have a chilling effect, right? To me, certainly be a valid reason or to be concerned about whether you should file a case or not. And so, yeah, I have been seeing and getting those kinds of questions. And what I've been telling people, John, is that you have to speak with a lawyer to really figure out if now is really the best time for you. Because for many people, now is the best time. For others, it might not be. And it really comes down to the facts and your background. And so, for instance, if you have a way forward and you're afraid to file because of maybe a criminal record, well, don't file yet. Speak with a lawyer. And then the lawyer can tell you, oh, there's a waiver that's available, and you're a good candidate for this waiver to forgive you of this issue or not, right? So that is a huge issue right now. I think more people, though, are inclined to file, but yeah, there is a degree of fear. What about naturalization cases? Like, I think right now is really a good time to file for naturalization and just like free yourself, right, from
Absolutely.
immigration.
Absolutely. I've still seen fairly the similar processing times for N-400
Hmm.
compared to with President Biden. So I would still continue to apply for that. Absolutely. Especially that would alleviate those travel concerns.
Right. Yeah, I anticipate that this year we're going to be doing a lot more naturalization cases than before.
And you know what, everyone that and who's maybe watching this later is that when you become a U.S. citizen, then you can, of course, apply for other family members. That would certainly make certain cases faster.
Hmm,
Now,
exactly.
about processing times, have you seen processing times be a little? And I know it's only been about a little over 60 days with President Trump, but have you seen anything different?
Yeah, the I-130s. I think the I-130s have slowed down, particularly in marriage cases. And I think the slowdown started to happen towards the tail end of the Biden administration. Last year, for example, in 2024, it was a wonderful year, right, of very fast approval times, 3 to 6 months for an adjustment of status in a marriage case without an interview. Now we're seeing I-130s penned for 12 months or longer in a spousal case. That's what we're seeing here. What about you?
Yeah, we see similar processing times, especially I-130. If I may share, is that I noticed, because on my live show, people ask me to check processing times. I try when I can, but I noticed in September 2024, at least with respect to family preference, for example, F2A,
Mm-hmm.
it used to have the time period, maybe 24 months. They got rid of that for all family preference. It just said see note. So if you happen to have any clients or people call in concerned about processing times, I'm more concerned about people who have a petition based on the F family preference, but are here, immigrant beneficiaries here, and they need to file a
Yeah.
waiver if they need to, depending on the
Mm.
facts, most likely. But that's going to back it up because the C note section underneath says USCIS is not going to issue a decision, approval, or denial until the prior date shows up on the visa bulletin. So if someone needs to file a waiver after that, that potentially could be 2 plus 3 years. Who knows? So
Yeah,
that's
that's going
where
to really
possibly.
drag the case out, right?
Mhm.
I mean, but honestly, we've been through Trump 1.0. We know that the whole intent is to frustrate, to slow down, and just to cause people to want to give up, right? Like this whole notion around self deportation, leave now, leave America now, otherwise we're coming after you. I think that approach of putting pressure on applicants and individuals here in the United States is the same approach that USCIS has now taken to try to slow things down and frustrate the process. This brings us to the NTA policy, actually, the notice to appear policy, which is back. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the notice to appear policy, I have a video about it. I don't know if John, if you've done anything on the NTA policy on your channel, but for the most part, that policy says that if you apply for a green card, your case is denied and you're here without status, well, USCIS can place you in removal proceedings to begin that process against you. And for some people, obviously, they will have an option before an immigration judge to get a green card and get the relief that they are seeking, but it creates so much fear and pressure on people. How would you explain the NTA policy, John, and maybe specifically as it relates to Trump 1.0, because there was a similar NTA policy under Trump 1.0, which really didn't play out that well for the administration?
Yeah, I expect different outcomes for them, that they're going to scrutinize these applications a lot more. So if, for anyone in the audience who has not hired an attorney to properly file a case, because I'm sure, LaToya, you've heard stories that people get rejected or denied. Maybe they didn't respond to the notice of intent denial or even the RFE
Hmm.
for something, I hate to say, but quote unquote simple for medical exam results. That would certainly be very unfortunate if you receive an NTA in the mail or in person to go appear in immigration court, but you could have filed your case properly and be prepared and by an attorney like LaToya.
And that's mind blowing, right? That's something as small as not including a medical, or maybe you might have missed a couple of questions on your application. Just minor things could lead to a denial. And then if you get that denial, then you're placed in removal when in fact these were really minor issues. Of course, as immigration lawyers, we would immediately look to either refile or appeal or do a reopening of the case if we find that there's a reason to reopen it. So we would be aggressive, right, to fight as quickly as possible before an individual is placed in removal. But it's still very mind blowing to think that a simple or small error can lead to an individual being placed in removal.
Exactly. Even people that have told me that, oh, they get receipt requests for evidence for the 864 affidavit of support. I said, look, you got lucky that you got
Yeah,
RFE. I've seen people get denied for
denied.
not
Yep.
putting in a
Mm-hmm.
form.
Mm-hmm.
So, look, anyone in your audience, if I may share that, if you have had especially a non-attorney, there's a lot of non-attorneys out there, consultant, notario, notary, to
Mm-hmm.
help you. I get it. Everyone has a different budget. But look, at this time with President Trump, we are not here to fearmonger, but this is your legal status. You definitely want an attorney like LaToya to help you out.
Right, or John. Of course. We work with you for a reason, right? You do a great job and just really an overall a good person to work with. Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
I know that a lot of what we're talking about, friends, obviously sounds really scary. And, like John said, we're not doing this to scare you, but to educate you, to empower you, and to let you know that during these times, it's really important to work with an experienced attorney on your case because this administration is really trying to slow everything down, frustrate you, and get you deported. That's really the bottom line. And then for those outside of the United States, they're trying to limit the number of people who could flow into America as well. On the State Department level, John, just real briefly, one of the things that I saw and I reported out on a few weeks ago is the fact that the State Department is going through budget cuts. They're cutting staff around the globe. And the fact that they're looking to revamp or get rid of the Foreign Affairs Manual, which tells us how the department operates and provides the rules and procedures for issuing visas and processing visas and all of that. They're really looking to change everything under that one voice executive order. I don't know if you have consular cases, but what do you think is going to happen globally with consular processing?
It's very unfortunate because there's already been delays even before the pandemic, right? Because pandemic highlighted the concern backlog. They have the interview, they receive the 221G, and sometimes people receive an actual list of what the officer needs, and sometimes it's nothing. So it's
Mm-hmm,
very
mm-hmm,
concerning. I call it like the black swamp of
mm-hmm,
visas,
mm-hmm.
unfortunately. I've noticed that, and like even the foreign, LaToya mentioned the Foreign Affairs Manual is basically a go to resource, just like the USCIS policy manual. Most of the time, we've been successful for the request for reconsideration. Let's say if someone's been refused a visa, that's not the end of the road, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
There's always another option, usually, but you need to contact an attorney, a licensed attorney, sooner than later.
Exactly, because everything is changing with immigration. Everything is changing. So now, as we kind of get to the end of this discussion here, what is maybe the one thing or one takeaway you want people to walk away with as they are thinking about filing a case right now? They're hesitating, maybe just a little bit because of all of the things they're seeing and hearing about. What one takeaway would you give to that person to encourage them to file?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking, LaToya. Is that one of the main perspective I share is that people ask, well, should I file now or not, or just wait out the 4 years? In the worst case scenario, you get detained, picked up by ICE agent, especially if you're not married. It's going to be difficult. It's possible. I've had clients get married at detention center. It's probably not what people expect or want as their marriage
No one
experience,
plans
but
that. No one
what?
plans for their wedding to
No
be in
one
that
plans
under
for that.
those
So
circumstances.
look, there's a lot of y'all that contact, I'm sure, both of our offices that you're not even married, but you've been together for many years. Maybe you're common law married, but look, you might as well just get it done legally. When you have a lawyer, the lawyer has to do a presentation, share the facts, and share it if a case has been filed, an
Mhm,
application with USCIS.
mhm,
You're going to have a much higher percentages to get your case rescheduled as the case's petition or application is processing.
mhm.
Whereas if you go into court, whether you have an attorney or not, and you tell a judge you've been married or common law married for a number of years, but you have no application file, the judge is, going to have that sour face. And they might not be as willing to give you a continuance.
Yeah, exactly. The way that I explain it to some new clients is that, first of all, if you have an option for a green card, move forward with it, because if you're picked up by ICE because maybe you're a collateral arrest, you just happen to be in an area where they were targeting someone else and they questioned you and learned that you do not have papers, well, they're going to bring you in as well. Or for some people, they're actually targeted for various reasons. So if you are detained by them, it's better to have an argument to make to hold up a baby an I-130 receipt or something like that, or a green card application receipt, adjustment of status saying, I'm on track. This is what's going on, right? To help with an argument to get you released. Also, if you're in front of an immigration judge, being able to show that I have something going with immigration, of course, that could help to a continuance or having it administratively closed so that you can pursue your USCIS process to the end and then go back into removal before a judge and terminate the whole proceeding. It does give you some degree of leverage if you have something in motion. For many people, of course, it's not going to be the slam dunk that will prevent you from being deported, particularly if your case is just in process and not yet approved. But at least it does give you a very strong argument to be released from detention.
Absolutely, Latoya. Now, if I can ask you a question, what's your experience with mandamus lawsuits? At least, there's you can sue for a number of different kind of cases, applications, but
Mhm.
you know, what are you seeing in terms of being able to file a lawsuit for those who are stuck?
So, for those who are stuck, particularly if they have an asylum case, because as you know, folks who file an asylum case affirmatively through USCIS, they could be waiting 8 years, 9 years, for some people close to 10 years before they even get an interview. Our new approach is this: at that 4 year mark, we could file a mandamus, go in and file that mandamus to force the government to take that next step in their case, because it's incredibly unfair to have them sit and wait that long. Although we know with asylum, sometimes strategically don't want to rush that case, right? It just really depends on the case and the facts. But for the most part, it's unfair to have people sit and wait for 8 or 9 years to be called in for an interview. But I'm also mindful of the fact that just a few days ago, the Trump administration issued an executive order attacking attorneys and pointing out immigration attorneys specifically, saying that, well, if you file, a lot of cases or lawsuits against us, particularly asylum cases, then we're going to seek sanctions or we're going to grieve you and complain to the State Bar Association about your activities. And so, well, I don't know, John, did you see that executive order? And if so, what did you think about it? I haven't shared my thoughts
Oh,
publicly on it until maybe now, but I'll let you go first.
I've been a little slower on recording videos lately, so I appreciate the invitation. I did record it, I think, within 24 hours of that one, and it was very concerning to me as well.
Yeah.
We both know a lot of great immigration attorneys, and we do the right thing. Of course, we hear about those oddball situations. They use the word coach. I know some people may say, like, okay, well, what's the difference with what we do? I say we prepare. So we don't
Yeah.
tell them what to say. It's their truth. We don't create the information. We based on their facts. Some of the immigration attorneys asked me, am I concerned? We're going to continue doing what we do to advocate for people. I know that when people, at least I'm in Texas, licensed in Texas, to file a complaint against an attorney, you have to have standing. You typically would have to be the client. So if the federal government wants to come at me, let's have it happen. So I don't think that grievance will go anywhere.
This attack on attorneys, whether it's immigration lawyers or any attorney out there, is a very scary and disappointing ploy by the administration to try to intimidate the legal profession. Generally speaking, it's an intimidation tactic. More specifically to immigration lawyers, I think that, yeah, of course, there are some out there who are doing the wrong thing, right? But there's already a process in place to not only reprimand, but to bring criminal charges against
Yes,
those individuals who are doing the wrong thing. And it typically happens when USCIS internally gets wind of the fact that here's a lawyer or a law firm that is filing a lot of fraudulent claims. This is a red flag. And then they refer that over to the Justice Department to investigate. And through the investigation that the Justice Department goes through, they interview former clients, they build their case, and sometimes it takes years for them to really build a case before they go into an immigration lawyer's office and take their files, right? There's already a process in place on the criminal side. Lawyers in those situations tend to be disbarred as well. There's a process through the state bar to take away their license in those situations. I looked at that memo from the White House and I thought, this is absolutely ridiculous. Bar associations, they know what's going on here and they're going to stand behind lawyers. And so will
exactly. I know.
judges. And so will judges because who approves the request for sanctions, right? It's a judge.
Exactly. They want to be put in that situation if they don't have the facts, right? So it's very unfortunate. I mean, I've heard of attorneys who rightfully have actually filed complaints against judges too, and that has not gone anywhere, unfortunately, generally speaking. So yeah, the profession is being intimidated right now, but we're going to continue what we do and advocate for clients.
Exactly. And on that note, guys, I hope that you found value from this discussion. John, thanks so much for being with us today and for sharing your insights. Guys, again, go check out his channel and subscribe to his channel if you have not yet already done so. Thanks so much for being with us today, and we will see you in the next one. Bye bye.